Hey guys, Luton here, and today I'm going to be talking about The Division again, but specifically I'm going to be talking about The Division and the hype around the game. Now you guys know that I'm always interested in the hype aspect of any game and how it affects people, but more and more I've been coming to this conclusion lately that it can be really damaging for not just, the game and the community, but for you as a player. It affects how you feel when you actually get into the game, and it can really damage your enjoyment. So I decided to get together with another YouTuber, Marco, and he has been heavily studying The Division. But it's a very interesting perspective because I have looked at The Division less, he's looked at it a lot more. So having those two comparative opinions and analysing what's been happening with the game there is something that I thought would be very interesting to talk about. So today we're going to do a dual discussion about this topic. Hope you enjoy, and you should really go and check out Marco's channel. He has a lot of good content about The Division, and I think a lot of people know this already. But if you haven't seen his channel, the link is on screen and down below. Go and check it out. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoy.
Hey everyone, so today I've got a little bit of a special video, something that I don't usually do because I wanted to talk a little bit about the hype around games in general and how it can actually be bad for a game to have a lot of hype around it. This is sort of a reactionary video to a very vocal minority that overhyped The Division for themselves and that is now disappointed with what they're seeing. I'm doing this video in a collaboration with Luton, who hasn't been following The Division as much as I have, but he has experienced similar things with other video game titles, and we're here today to share our opinions on the whole thing. So first up, Luton, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with other games and their hype problems around it?
Hey Marco, so yeah, the issue with this lies in an ever-developing trend from usually large publishers. In order they generate the most interest for a game, it's going to be teased, it's going to be marketed. That's not really unusual. But what I feel we see more and more recently is that a community will actually hype itself up so much that when that product is released or demonstrated in a beta, it simply can't live up to the expectations that the community have built. We've seen it happen with other games previously, like Titanfall, Evolve, Battlefield Hardline, where the expectations was just higher than could be delivered in the game. Both of them, those games, they were not fundamentally terrible, but people's expectations were just so much that it could never live up to what people wanted. I feel had those games been released without so much hype and so much teasing around them, that they might have actually fared better, in the community opinion. I mean, think about Half-Life 3, okay? There's a very real possibility that that game will just never get made now because the current team at Valve feel they could never live up to the expectations of the almost cult level of hype around that game. And I think that's a good example of, how it can be negative for people.
Half-Life is a good example. I didn't think of that. But I think that this is actually quite similar to what is currently happening in The Division. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. 100%, yeah.
So yeah, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, and we already talked about this a couple of weeks ago, which then we would upload to YouTube, but I didn't do because I felt like the video got a little bit too lengthy, and listening back at it, I also felt like that I didn't get my point across. It sounded like I was trying to defend The Division, which really wasn't what I was doing. So today I called you up again and I want to give it another try, so that's why you're here, again. Now, to get right to the point, to avoid last week's problems, there are a lot of people that are saying that The Division is not what they thought it would be. And from what I have seen, there are two words that I just keep seeing that keep coming back, and those words are graphics and bullet sponge. More specifically, people are upset that the game doesn't look as good as that it did in 2013, and people are upset about how long it takes to kill enemies. So first up, as someone who hasn't been following The Division that much, but still got to play in the beta, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's pretty simple, really. As you say, I came into the Division beta with an awareness of the game, but I hadn't really been following it in significant detail. I got to play the game a couple of times prior to the beta at EGX, the event in the UK. I had plenty of experience with games like Ghost Recon before now, so I felt, hey, I know what to expect here with this game. I wasn't wrong, it was fairly what I expected. Third person, city pandemic environment. Some things I didn't anticipate were the really excellent UI and the generally really smooth gameplay flow, which made it really, really enjoyable.
So mostly positive.
Yeah, I didn't really sort of have loads of I didn't come into it and think like, oh my god, I had a good time. Also stuff like the tension in the dark zone compared to the PvE areas, that made it quite addictive. And it's honestly one of the few games, and I said this when I was live streaming, that I've played in quite a while, where I felt that drive to come straight back to the game after I'd been out of it for a few hours. But yeah, when it comes to gripes people have about like graphics and bullet sponging, I actually find those criticisms pretty ridiculous. But again, this is where that hype and over-expectation comes in. The bullet sponging is such a non-issue. I'm surprised people are even talking about it. It's an RPG style game. In RPG games, enemies have variable and scaling levels of damage. We knew that this is what the Division would be. Even I knew this, and I've only been keeping half an eye on the game. So how could anybody be shocked or frustrated by that? It's just completely beyond me. Being able to perform one-round headshots on enemies, where everyone's like, that's always the benchmark example people have, you know?
Yeah.
That's just going to be game-breaking. It makes no sense whatsoever. When it comes to the map design, the overall look of things, the game looks great, there's no doubt about it. The light, the atmosphere, the level of detail in the game, the detritus around the map, it's really good. If you compare it to other games of a similar size, it's very capable.
Like I did with Fallout, for example.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the map size and location, I think, is the only area you could try and say was contentious. And even that is something that I feel, you know, it naturally just happens and changes in development. I think the real sticking point, though, is, you know, as we have seen and a lot of people have commented on, is the way in which it was marketed and arguably hyped around that whole Brooklyn scenario. That, I think, is the main contentious issue.
I want to make very clear here that we're not trying to defend the Division. That's something I want to make very clear, because I feel like that last time I kind of got that feeling listening back at it. But I do feel like a lot of the shit that the Division is getting is, like you said, it's just not justified. For example, when talking about the graphics, I'm just going to use that as an example again. A lot of the people are upset that, for example, the windows do not have reflections and stuff like that. But when looking back at the 2013 trailer, you will see that you also do not have the reflections right there. Yeah, you have the reflections on the ground, but the current build of the game also has that. Now, I'm not saying that the game looks as good as that it did back in 2013. In fact, as we speak, I'm doing a little bit of research on those things together with Chris, who is a friend of mine, and we're testing, you know, which one looks better, but that has to be determined yet. But still, people have this surreal ideology of what the 2013 trailer is, and they've just hyped it up for themselves so much over the years. To be fair, the enemies in the first trailer had a lower time to kill, and some things were a little bit different, but, you know, things change in development. Looking back at 2014, we can see that enemies already are a little bit beefier, especially when talking about the elites that eats just bullets and skills of 3 people and just refuses to die. But for some reason, a lot of people still thought this to be a tactical shooter and thus hyping the game up for themselves for different reasons.
Yeah, as I said before, this was always really clear to everyone in the game. It wouldn't make any sense to have it be like a tactical CS-style shooting experience, which I think is what some people strangely have got it into their head that it might somehow be like that. I think what has happened is the look and feel, the overall style of the game is fairly apocalyptic. So you have people wanting this to be almost like a survival style game, perhaps even a bit like kind of DayZ, where you have groups of friends because you've got that 4-player group of people going around attacking others. And you get that twitchy, very tense gameplay situations, you know, where one round makes a difference, you know, and I think people love that. They feel that, you know, if they get that one shot, you know, that's the skill benchmark.
Yeah, I've definitely seen comments like that on YouTube. I wish this was more like DayZ, but then set in New York, so...
Yeah, but in an RPG game, you know, that's not how it is. I mean, in the beta, we did end up having firefights between other players, but they would last as long as 10 minutes. And that constant engagement of people taking, you know, these people, they were taking damage, they'd move away a little bit, they'd heal, and then they'd come back and continue to fight. I think that's what people are struggling with. They want it to be a bit more like that sort of survival style, where if you get the drop on people, you can destroy them and then gloat about it. Well, in the Division, it's not like that. You can't just perform a perfect snipe on someone, because chances are they'll just take a hit, get away, cover, heal up, maybe run away, maybe fight you. And you know, this happened at one of the extraction points in the beta. You know, some guy shot me in the back and we turned around and we started having a fight. We ended up getting locked down against another group of guys as well on a rooftop. They'd secured themselves via only 2 access points there, and you know, they could take a little bit of damage, move away and heal. And even though we were firing at them, we were throwing grenades up on the roof, they were just taking it and not dying. So I don't entirely disagree with the fact that both AI and player bullet sponging is a good thing. I can see why it is that most people actually wish it were not like that. But the reality is that if the game didn't have its damage model and its RPG game style, it simply wouldn't work in the way it's been designed. So ultimately, people just got to suck it up and get on with it.
Yeah, well, that may be where all these, the more I see, the less I want comments, that's where they're coming from. People have watched the trailers, but the trailers show such a small part of the game that people get their interpretations of what this game is really going to be. For example, like you said, they thought it might have been like a DayZ type of game. And then the ones who had this idea in their heads, they're going to be disappointed when they see that the game ends up being different. Their ideas and imagination that they build up over the years of what this game could or should have been don't match with what the game really is. But let's not act that the publishers and the developers are completely innocent here, because they want the game to be hyped. Because the more hyped it is, the more pre-orders they will get. There are many situations where the publisher or the development team apply clever marketing strategies to further push the game's hype, wherever that may coming from. Like, for example, they leak footage, which was on purposely leaked, of course, but it brings the word about the game around. Or inviting big YouTubers to events and paying them to make videos about their game. This happened just a few weeks ago, where many YouTubers got invited to either Malmo or LA to record some footage about The Division, and this all generates hype. Suddenly, the whole internet was talking about the game. But this is just clever and nothing more. I wouldn't say that this is shady by any means, it just teases an audience. But there are also many occasions where things do get a little bit out of the sun, because during development they run into some obstacles and they have to make some changes to the game, but then most of the time they do not let the people know about these changes, and I think that's where it's coming from. So an example is the map. Everybody was still expecting, like you said, that Brooklyn would be in the game. But then in 2014 they changed the plans and choose to go with Manhattan. And I already discussed this in a previous video of mine, but they never mentioned this in all these years. So all this hype about how big the map could be, because we had Brooklyn, but we also had Manhattan, that just builds up. And then they didn't say anything about that up until the very last moment when the beta was released. Now, that is going to be a disappointment to some people as well, and that is completely the fault of the developers. Now, what I'm a little bit interested in is why they didn't just say that Manhattan would be in the game and that Brooklyn had been removed. We have taught game developers and publishers to say what we want to hear. It sounds really weird, right? I mean, it sounds completely the opposite of what you would expect it. But let me take you back to an interview between Team Epiphany and a developer on The Division. The question that I'm on about is when they asked if the PC version for The Division had some restrictions due to that game also being developed on consoles. And then the developer surprisingly responds with that it was definitely a factor, and even though the PC has its own version, it has been scaled back a bit because it was also developed on consoles. To me, this was just an honest question, and the developer gave an honest answer. But the amount of backlash that this got was just insane. Everybody is screaming downgrade in the comments, and Ubisoft is a piece of shit and whatnot. You know the comments what I'm talking about. And I really don't think that's fair in this case. I'm sorry I'm turning this a little bit into a monologue right now, but in my opinion, the PC version for the game is one of the best PC ports, if it's even a port, that I've played and seen in a long time. You can see that there's definitely some effort that they put into this. Yes, I bashed this game when it looked downgraded at E3 2015, and I will again when I need to. But there are settings which even my overclocked GTX 980 Ti cannot run with a stable 60 frames per second. But at the same time, even a GTX 750 Ti could run this game if you choose to play on something that is not 1080p.
Yeah, and let me just jump in and say as well, I have been a long-time console player all my life. I've played on PC and then back to console and now back to PC. So I played across both. And, people do get outraged and they do get frustrated about all the downgrade and stuff. But ultimately, it's not the end of the world. It's still going to be fine. I, as a PC gamer, don't feel like it's a huge problem. And again, it's one of these stupid things. You can get frustrated about it and you can freak out all you like, but you live in a world where consoles shift a gigantic amount of sales. And you can't expect a large publisher to just have the game, be one thing for PC and another for consoles. That's not how it works. That's not going to change anytime soon, and freaking out and getting super frustrated about it really isn't going to alter anything. And I know that people are going to come back around and they'll say like, well, if we never said anything about it, then it never would change. I just can't imagine a situation where they're going to do that. I mean, if a publisher or a developer together decide like, hey, yeah, we're going to spend some time and we're going to release a PC version separately, then yeah, they can choose to do that. But ultimately, again, it's their decision. They're developing the game. They're publishing the game. It's their choice. And if you don't like it, well, then you can make a decision based off of that,
Yep. And like I said, it's not like the PC version is crap. The game is very scalable. It's very optimized. And there's definitely options in there that only the best PCs on the market will be able to run. Could the game have possibly looked better if it wasn't developed for consoles? Yes, without a doubt, and I think that goes for almost every game. But when a developer decides to openly speak about this, how the consoles might have held back the PC version, the whole internet just goes crazy with, clickbaity titles, including ranting videos about how Ubisoft did it again. And yes, sometimes it is justified, but not here. This was just a developer simply being honest. But now, because of this backlash, I can guarantee you that without a doubt, next time he will just say, no, the PC version is as good as it can get. We have amazing this, amazing that, etc., etc. And what do you think that would have happened if they said at E3 2014 that Brooklyn is no longer in the game because they changed it to Manhattan? The same thing would have happened. People would be yelling, Ubisoft downgrade, even before listening to why and the reasoning behind it. People only want to hear one thing. And you're teaching the media to lie to you because you only want to hear that one thing.
I think the best way to explain this, quite simply, is that it's far easier to hate and pick holes in something than it is to be constructive and balanced. This doesn't mean that you don't criticize a title, but it means you look at the good and the bad to reach a more grounded opinion. That's something that I've always tried to do. And when people make content that is just ranting hate about any big publisher, it is just generally feeding the same group of people who already had this opinion. So it's fairly self-perpetuating. I never purchased Watch Dogs as it just didn't really interest me, or Unity, but I was aware of all the issues that went on there, and yes, I think you can obviously see why people might continue to feel burned by those. And the other hand, if you were stung before, surely you would then learn that lesson and therefore just wait and see what a game is like before you purchased. I mean, I've always been amazed when I look at some of the videos that I've done. I can make a video where I am incredibly critical and harsh, and maybe overly harsh, about a game or something in a game, and then I can make another video about the same game very positively, and you get the back and forth comments. Like, you get some, it's ridiculous. People believe they almost have kind of like a prejudiced opinion before they even start. So when they have that bias to begin with, you're already setting yourself up for a one-sided argument.
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you mean.
My biggest personal concern right now is in the worrying prospect of so much data being held on the user side for the PC. This is really my thing. People discovered this during the beta and were already starting to exploit this to cheat in the game and showcase that it could be cheated into the game for PC. This was actually replied pretty quickly by Ubisoft, and they were saying that they are fully aware and that the system's going to be put in place before the game is released. Forget about graphics and bullet sponging. This is the thing that I'm going to be keeping absolutely focused on learning what the deal is, because it's far, far more important. If they didn't fix this or didn't implement a strong enough system before release, we could just see ridiculous levels of cheating, like an epidemic level, like we've seen in GTA 5, or let's be honest, a litany of any other titles. And this is what I need to know before they would secure my purchase. There are so many games which are just destroyed on PC by hacking and cheating and scripting, and if they're going to have that level of user end stuff on your side, they need to have some solid system in place, because otherwise an RPG style game where you're getting expensive loot and all these kind of things, can you imagine getting like a really amazing drop and then some guy screws you over because he's been able to edit it, or you'd throw the game away.
Yeah. And he would be able to manually edit his loot as well, it'd have different damage numbers and different, so it would be, you wouldn't be able to kill him.
Yeah, it would destroy the game. I mean, it would basically kill the game on day one. So unless they fix that, and yet people are still freaking out about these other aesthetic things, which are so unimportant in the scale of things. They're just not important in the scale of what needs to happen with the game. I've spoken about the issues of game quality often on my channel, and my community know my feelings about that. ultimately, a game developer will always try to produce the best game that they can on a AAA level anyway, but, any level, really. It's ridiculous to suggest that they wouldn't do that. Anybody who says that obviously hasn't spoken firsthand with any game devs about what they do. If a game doesn't live up to the hype prior to its release, it's down partly to the developer, but more often than not, it's actually down to the community as well for fueling the fire. When it comes to the most important issue though, you hold the power. You are the one making the purchase. If you don't feel a game is good enough, then wait or just don't purchase it. If you're still enjoying it and believing in it, then do purchase. It's a pretty straightforward choice.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it better myself. If at the end of the day you still feel like this game turned out to be something different than what you had hoped for, the best way to speak is just with your wallet and go play something else that you're more interested in. But I guess that will have to do for this video. Again, it got a little bit lengthy, but there's just no way to explain this in a much shorter time. I really tried. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, Lutin.
No.
But thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you, Marco.
I think I'm very happy with what we said today. And that will be all. As always, I will see you guys later, or like they say, in the Netherlands. Zie je later.